Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode. Before typing the title of this episode in the YouTube video, I just had this intent to give a talk, this feeling. And then for a moment I just fathomed, like, what should I talk about? And this sentence just literally popped into my mind. I don't know how to tell you. It was literally as if, like, I asked myself, what talk should I give? And, you know, the honest among you are the most advanced, this idea rose to me. And I will tell the listeners that, you know, on this planet, we have this notion that there are ideological agendas. But I will tell you, there is also an emotional agenda. And this can only happen with the ability of a mind to fathom the possibilities of its future. I have realized that all emotions stem from the future. All emotional moments have something to do with what could have happened, or what will happen, or what has happened technically for the future. So I guess in this episode, in honor of William Shakespeare's quote, "No legacy is so rich as honesty," I'm going to explain why I feel honesty is the greatest strategy towards a reality that could be potentially simulated. When in the subtitle I say protecting the future generations from dehumanization, you know, I will tell you I have a hidden lament. I'm writing a poetry book called The Lament of MW1829, which is my name. And so I would say this is a sort of, you know, emotion from a time traveling perspective. You see, right now in 2022, there's a natural world accessible to us human beings that are alive, and the technological realm is just beginning. We're at the pioneering, technically still the pioneering phase. You know, when I look at my lifetime, being born from 91, I see that I was born at a time when technology was starting to have more of an intimate relationship with man's mind. Right now, technology, our phones are in our hand. But in the future, we don't know how much technology will be a part of us. Right now, it's fair to say technology is a major part of people's outer lives. Especially when the concept of, let's say, money is attached to it. You know, human beings are hilarious creatures. You know, for the sake of their survival, they, in some sense, can throw away their ethics instantly. I find that, first, in order to answer the question, the honest among, not the question, but the statement, the honest among you are the most advanced, to be able to comment on that, first we need to look at the idea of honesty. And then, what does advancement mean? Because technically, if we identify honest as order, the advancement of honesty would be just ordered structures till the end of time. But if we have, for example, honesty being chaotic, then it would be the advancement of chaos, you know. So in some sense, it's as if, like, first we gotta see what game the species is playing, then we gotta realize what kind of players we are, then the players have to play the game, and in doing so, if they follow a strategy, they in some sense win, you know. Believe it or not, I feel every person on this planet should play chess, you know, because in reality, the projections of our mind has a board, and pretty much a person's beliefs, all the beliefs they have on everything, you know, all their beliefs set up the the chessboard in which their ego moves in. Their ego becomes a playing piece in. On some level, if 8 billion human beings cannot agree on a vision of the future, in some sense, it's like failure is inevitable, right? It's as if either there will be an opportunity of organization taken advantage of, or the opportunity of organization wouldn't be taken advantage of. Right now, in 2022, we're living in, believe it or not, the most enlightened state of mind compared to all the past generations. I'm not talking about Vedic enlightenment. I'm talking about an ability to recognize the moment way more sophisticated than our ancestors, you know. Divinity is a different discussion, you know. When a person really goes towards spirituality, that means if a talk is, let's say, spirit oriented, usually it goes into the submission of the ego, and then the divine will is moving everything. But right now, the honesty I'm trying to speak about is not the honesty that one finds through oneness, right? That honesty is different. That's kind of like irresponsible honesty is oneness, you know. Alright, time to bring out the notepad. If anybody wants to take notes on honesty, now's the time. Whether we know it or not, all our efforts are for the future of mankind. Every good and evil person, every, efficient and inefficient expression on this planet, it's all for mankind. We're all living for ourselves, but we're living for our collective self. So what does honesty mean for the self? What does it mean for the species? And what does it mean for the world? 3 contexts where we should wonder about honesty. And I guess an important point is honesty is actually, we have a duality here where we cannot understand honesty without dishonesty. That means anybody who has been dishonest, and anybody, like if a human being has just been honest from the beginning of their life, first of all, it's impossible, because in order to be capable of managing the synchronization of our inner realms and outer realms, we have to discover what it would be like for it to be in turbulence. Pretty much every human being up until this point has been living two lives simultaneously, and not realizing in some sense that the relationship of one's inner life with their outer life suggests how manifestations karma occurs. Believe it or not, karma is kind of like how the universe is checking the attitudes or the sincerity of creaturehood. You know, from various storylines we can think about the world. So what is the world? It's a subject and it's an object. And when it comes to an object, first of all, as a subject, it is stories, and then as an object, it is events, right? So the world is a series of physical events. It's a changing world. It seems that consciousness is on some, endless staircase of evolution. And so the human being's inner life is really the story they're telling themselves. In some moments of my life, I've tested this as a sort of, mystical empiricist. To continue, what does honesty mean for the self, for the species, for the world? 3 dimensions to the concept of honesty. When we say among you the most species, among you the most advanced, this is in some sense a suggestion to the species. You know, the idea is pretty much instead of treating the human being like an evolutionary biological animal, that in some sense its animal instincts are surpassing its ability to be civilized, like this is something maybe violent, the philosophy of violence hasn't considered, that in some sense 4.5 billion years of random circumstances, kind of building us up to a point where we can consciously begin dictating our own circumstances. The incredible thing about the human being is that the archetype of the human being can be fractally metaphorized for the species. That means it's like a person had an ability to see one human being as a human being, and then the person had an ability to see 8 billion human beings behaving as if they were one human being. For example, I believe it's in Emil Durkheim's Structuralism in sociology, where from the sociological perspective, it's as if society is being designed like body parts, right? And so it's as if different parts of society hold their own function, yet they are part of, the whole system, right? And so, in some sense, to have, let's say, or let me say it this way, instead of 8 billion creatures evolving on a rock, we change it to 8 billion designers. That means like there was this anime show, what was it called, Dragon Ball Z or something, and the main character was from this planet where all the people in that civilization on that planet, they were a warrior species. They were a species where from all archetypes of society were in some sense washed over by the concept that war was honor, right? That's like the warrior species in the Dragon Ball Z show, you know. So I am thinking the human species is not that much of a warrior species because we have a humorous and romantic side to the human mind, right? We're not, it's like, you know, it's like even if somebody tries to rule the world at some point, they're going to be like, what am I doing? I need to relax, you know. So when I look at the human species, I don't say, I mean, we do have a warrior side, but that's more of, I would say it should be left as a shield rather than used as the warrior instinct in man should be used as a shield more than a sword. Now, what I'm trying to say is imagine we were a designer species. And so this argument was made. One human being came in history and said, we are a designer species. Everybody, their intelligence, as an organism, is to receive senses. We are in some sense acting like, you know, hilariously immortal gods when it comes to like using our sensory perception to extract meaning out of stuff, you know. Right? It's as if like, you know what's hilarious? It's like man is not God, but behind his eyes he can know what it feels like, you know. As a designer species, there is the suggestion that even the youngest child on this planet to the oldest person living on this planet, you know, oldest, youngest, doesn't matter. At every moment of our life, before emotions solidify us into a sort of story, we are looking at geometry. We are a one-sided viewer of a realm of shape, space, color, and it's endless. And the possibilities of geometry endlessly recalibrating. Let me tell you, if somebody said what would the imagination of an infinite being look like, I would say geometric. I would instantly say geometric, because the possibility of in some sense having shape, having space, and then being able to, in some sense, like arithmetic is hilariously, it's as if like mathematicians were acting like gods when they created, you know, arithmetic, right? When it was discovered in some sense that we could add, subtract, multiply, and divide perception, not just numbers, right? Because what are numbers? They, in some sense, they associate to physical reality. On some level, all of knowledge, dear listeners, is language to interpret the world. And every field of knowledge has its own language, right? Any sort of behavior of advancement in the outer realms has to some degree at any moment the possibility to have an interpretation in the inner realms. What our minds are not just, you know, storytellers lost in their own worlds. What our minds are actually attributeless, unknown viewers, present as space, being conscious of its content. I'll go to a new page here. Let's say we have, you know, the journey of here. The temporary journey Guys, I want to speak about a concept called creaturism. This is, I am in some sense coining this for the way I'm speaking about it right now. When I wonder about human life, I see it that it is the temporary journey of creatures in the void. This is the most poetically honest view I have. If right now an extraterrestrial, let's say hypothetically, came down and was like, yo, human being, what are you guys? What's your species? Like, what's the story of your species? And imagine we didn't want to like lose face in front of these extraterrestrials, we'd be like, we'd be like the temporary journey of creatures in the void. You see, to me, something I realized, and believe it or not, this theme has been shared in so many narratives in history, is that honor is the backup system to those found in anguish. That means before a person can, let's say, be worthy of their greatest expression of their own mind. That means really how I see it is that every person is using their mind. And when I look at people, I ask myself, okay, how have others, in what advanced ways have they used their mind? Like, this is the remarkable thing, that technically, because we each have a private universe behind our eyes, that private inner realms, right? Private art studio. The person's like, I can't afford a art studio in the outer realms, but in my inner realms, you should see how big it is. What I'm trying to say, guys, is that human beings are, temporary creatures in the void. When we look at reality, we wonder, how should the human being behave? This is a question of what it has from the past and how the past journeys into the future. So, one of the biggest factors about understanding behavior is, in some sense, how conscious is the creature and to what level, inner level of consciousness are they relating to the reality, to the world. There is so much language dressed up as truth on this planet that on some level we have to treat what we see as a simulation, not because what we see is not real, because what we see, its meaning is a subject, and a subject is not an object. A person can say, show me an object. It's like, yay, I saw it, touched it, there, an object. But if somebody says, show me a subject, it's as if, like, unless you write it down, there's no other way. Unless you communicate it, there's no other way. It's as if behind our eyes, there's behind the eyes of every human being, there's been a hidden world this whole time, and it seems that the purpose of the body is a physical continuity, and the purpose of the mind is not just like the dullness of an immortal walk, right? But in some sense, it is the activation, it is the releasing of the inner realms into the outer realms, but not through indecency, through decency. You see, the universe, one view is that it's lifeless. It's just space. Space doesn't have a personality. It's lifeless, And so that's one view. Another view, this is how really the shamanic life begins, or the religious life is shamanism with language, The shaman saw the divine in the trees, the religious person saw the divine in a book, If the world is alive right now, just think of what that would imply. And guys, this isn't transcreationism. This should have been creaturism. When a creature realizes the definition of itself is unknown. There we go. Creating philosophies with a couple of words. It's very strange, the situation in regards to the human position. I think after we realize every person on the planet is overreacting, to the massive emptiness that surrounds us and encapsulates us, and they are in some sense bunkering down in a belief. Right now it's hilarious. The species, every person who believes in anything, they're sitting on a chair. Right? And the mystics who realize this whole time there has been a direct experiential relationship beyond the humanized archetype. You see, the danger of dehumanization for the future is not that they would be incapable of being it, but it would be in some sense that they forget how they were human. Right? Like, it's inevitable. Right now we can totally see, just with a couple phones and consoles and computers, people have literally, their attention is not less on the natural world. And if an artificial world becomes it's like, if the danger of dehumanization in the future is that if the species instead of going towards a natural paradise, goes towards an unnatural paradise, which is another way of saying, if free will desires to move around and be free and act like a god, all those egos with the god complex hidden beneath them, it's as if it's literally a choice of an artificial paradise, which is short-term gratification, and this concept of, you can say, the paradise of paradise, the true nature of the heavenly state. There could be a truth being all of us right now that is beyond the human idea. Right? Does the species have the honesty to be like, whoa, nobody knows anything? Right? Let us realize that every moment the brain is simulating itself, and it is extracting. It's literally like, let me tell you, people don't have memories. When people say they remember, they're actually pulling memories into the relevance of now. Somebody who truly wants to access their memory, like, that means you could just sit for 10 minutes and live in your mind as if you're floating over your memories, like a drone camera moving over the mountains. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's all about how you hold yourself in the moment. This is what I have realized. This because the human being, due to its rhythmic nature, is rendered as a playful entity. Because it's rendered as a playful entity, no living creature actually ever, from entering Earth, can go to a lesser realm. Do you know? The lesser realm is a self-simulation on Earth. It's as if it's like it's like a video game. Once you get to level 5, you can never go to level 4. Do you know? You can keep going up from level 5. Right? So it's as if, now imagine from a Tibetan Buddhist perspective, every system has their own levels of heaven and hell, like in Tibetan Buddhism, there's such a complexity that it's as if, like, they say hell is in some sense like your consciousness could become the consciousness of a fish at the end of the bottom of the ocean, right? Due to the ignorance you had, for example. Right, but these are all like, they're ancient stories. Like a yogi saw a deer, like this really liberated yogi, right? Like, not liberated, but this yogi who was trying to be in samadhi all the time, and then right before he dies, a deer jumps and he's like, oh, no way, a deer, and he reincarnates as a deer. Like, this is in the Puranas written by Rishi Vyasa, like thousands of years ago, and the guy becomes a deer in his next life. Right, with the sense of in the story written in the Puranas, this guy reincarnates as a deer, but he has all his memories, and eventually, after a couple of lifetimes, he comes back to the same seat he was in before. You see? The brilliance of yoga, the brilliance of all the Buddhist tradition is in some sense that due to the recognition that objects are empty before we look at them, there is an emptiness to reality. The purpose of human life is not to find a satisfactory loop of knowledge that repeats itself every day. You know, it's honestly about what haven't you seen yet. You know, this is, I think, the true meaning of knowledge is another way of saying we're now exploring its minds, not just bodies, you know. In my school, Mr.Withinian school of thought, I would say, you know, the body is an explorer, but the mind is in some sense an advanced communicator. If somebody was like, hey, Mr. Within, what's the most advanced thing happening on this planet? I'd be like, communication, man. You know, it's like the ability that we have to communicate. Like there's this fact that you can find it anywhere, right? Where they say the human species is the only species that gets embarrassed. You know? You know, all the other species, like, it's like, yo, we're not even wearing clothes, you know, and the human being is wearing clothes and feeling embarrassed in front of nature. You know? The embarrassment is the sign of an advanced being, I'm telling you. You know, anybody who has ever felt embarrassed, it's like that was a moment the mind was advancing, you know. It's as if you walk through the flames and you're like, did my feet burn? And you realize you had these giant shoes, you know. The man who walked on fire, you know, with shoes, you know. It's like anybody can walk on fire with shoes, you know. It's like, it's not that mystical anymore. You know, there is, see, the whole thing about spirituality, guys, is really, it's just language. What it is that there's something unknown going on. And if we ignore this unknown and we cower away in our beliefs, we realize that we have not allowed our mind to advance. Right? So it's as if more important than how a person feels about their past, every person must have a feeling towards their future. And if you are mighty, you begin to wonder about not just the current generation. It's as if it's like the sign of an advanced mind is in some sense the most advanced effort is displayed. That's it. That means if somebody just displays an advanced effort in anything, right, they're going to eventually see that there's a sort of force behind how the will of the moment happens, that it's not just how you are an attitude in the void, it's not just your attitude to the void, it's literally like how free the being is. You know, there was this show called Vinland Saga. In it there was one character called Thor's fight with a sword, right? So that means there's no fear in the mind of a champion, okay? Or champions are those who have at least, I shouldn't say attack, but who have walked into the fear of whatever. Because fear is literally, it's like Pokemon, it appears out of nowhere. It's like, you know, the person, you know, goes on a balcony they've never been on before that's really high up, you know, and it's as if like fear, like a Pokemon appeared, you know. When it comes to honesty, on some level, all children are born honest. We all started from an honest stage of being because there was no preference for dishonesty. There was no preference for artificial bypassing of karma, you know. Really what it is that, at least from the Vedic standpoint, they shared very brilliantly that every person has a nature. Every person. You have a nature and you have a disposition. whoever's listening to me right now, it's as if your preferences are not just because of, how you were raised or just your memories. It is also your nature, which is another way of saying underneath all the ideas of yourself, the type of energy you're being has to do with how you feel about everything. So if a person can readjust how they feel about everything, and it's like the energy of another parallel universe activates to move the moment. I think I couldn't have said that any better. What it is that it's wondering about technically what your inner child would do. Right, and what is the inner child? The inner child is not an egoic claim to manifestation. The inner child is a witness. That means when people have fun, they say time flies by when you're having fun. Why? Because it's a timeless state. Because it is a state where the simplicity of how the moment is being has way more authorization to move into the future than the complexity of an artificial. It's as if when the past possesses the present, we call that desire. And if the present is not possessed by its past, the future becomes its revelation. It's automated. That means it's as if human beings this whole time, it's as if their energy could have been used in two modes. One is like your energy's looping back through the past and coming back to the present, or your energy moves through the future. But if the future is collective, it means it encompasses the past. Right? I don't know what it was. I think it was from somebody. I don't know if this was from some New Age website or what it was, but somebody had written the statement, which I thought it was a remarkable work of language, where it was like this statement in this ancient tablet. I don't know if it's emerald tablets, but anyways, right? It was like the statement in these tablets, and what it was saying was that the past was pretty much giving a message in a bottle to the future, and saying we lived so you guys could be eternal, and so when you guys are eternal, you will make us eternal. Like if the ideal was on that level, right? Imagine living for the future, so the future can live for you, can in some sense reanimate you. Imagine in the future they created technology where all the people on the planet were reanimated. Literally they just came back, as if time travel applied to a universe, to the world, as if the world is time traveling, That's a crazy idea, no? A self time traveling in a world time traveling through itself. But anyways, the idea is that the eternal one, the eternal future, in some sense, awakens, the temporary past. Imagine parallel universe realities were a thing, and somebody had no will to, let's say, live in life, right? And then the people came and said, hey man, why don't you have a will to live in life, right? And the person's like, man, anything I want to do, probably a parallel universe of mine is doing it. It's like parallel self problems, There's so many ways to look at life that after some point we end up becoming just designers. This is the healthiest and purest archetype I have found. That the mind should be treated like a designer. The body should be treated like an expert. And pretty much in any dimension of life, any human being who has a story of life, they have to have the unknown as a factor. So anybody who wants to, in some sense, wonder about, let's say, the nature of truth, you have to find the unknown variables in your current system of belief. Here, I'll let me see if I can do something. let's say we have the secular perspective. The religious perspective and the philosophical perspective. It's singular. That means materialists, they're like, this is it. The religious perspective is also like singular, and the way of all religious traditions is that there is a divine source to nature, a divine cause. And this divine cause at its core is inconceivable. That means both polytheistic and monotheistic traditions are acknowledging the inconceivability and the unknownness of God, right? That means all religious people have this in common, that it's like an unknown beyond the person force, okay? So it's technically singular. So religious view is like everything is God's will, right? The secular view is everything is man's will, right? So still it's singular. Okay. That means singular worldviews. A secular perspective is also a singular worldview. Now, it is only the philosophical perspective, and the philosophers in this realm, even though I feel philosophers don't get paid enough, but I think every philosopher deep down is like, how do people not care about how we look at everything? We can even say it's not even a philosopher. It's like the evolutionary animal is philosophic. We are a philosophic evolutionary animal. Who knew our philosophies were also evolving? We're like, no way, It's like Darwin couldn't see that. It's like Descartes could. I mean, honestly, modern society is a leap from Darwinism to Descartesism. Here, there we go. Now, the philosophical perspective, because I guess maybe this is an advantage for people not caring about philosophy, because then the philosophers have their privacy, But anyways, here, we have the concept of the singular, and we have the concept of the multidimensional. The materialist has an allegiance to the idea of matter. The world cannot be filtered beyond it. The religious person has the idea of God, and the world cannot be filtered beyond God. Like if a person truly, like I have friends who are very religious, right? And it's as if one of them, his hands weren't clean and he didn't want to even touch a holy book, So like the religious view is that it's like we're in God's world. But God is not an idea. God is an inconceivable source, a source of being. Like that's I guess the common denominator view of all views of God. Pretty much like what are the options? There's nothing in charge. There's the human mind in charge, or there is something beyond the human mind in charge. Like these are really the options. right? The philosophical perspective allows, how can I tell you, reality to be multidimensional. So when I say the honest among you, it could be in some sense those who are honest to the unknown, multidimensional, those who are honest to unknown, to the unknown multidimensional nature of how life is happening. Pretty much, guys, what I'm trying to say is that the philosophical perspective still is wondering about how life could be happening in ways we don't know. As long as this view is open, it's as if a species is acknowledging that there's uncharted territory in front of its eyes and there's uncharted territory behind its eyes. The honesty we need right now is not human beings trying to live like past human beings, but we want to see in some sense, pure and complete activation of the potential of a DNA in the void. Okay? That means it's as if if a person for a second was thinking, okay, let's just for a second pancake flip the story of the world, and for a second everybody was immortal. Imagine everybody was immortal. Imagine nobody could die, right? It's as if what would happen? We would get bored of, in some sense, our dishonest games. Do you see? It's as if nobody could lose anything, it's as if there would be no reason for chaos to exist. Do you know? There would be, chaos could, in some sense, it's as if immortality is when chaos cannot touch you. Do you know? As a sort of endless walking order, but immortality also is like an Iron Man suit, for that which is an eternal space. Right? So right now we are being in space, or we are human beings. I would say in the very far future, we're going to be the space where we are being human in. Right? So it's kind of like this. Let me tell you what it is. It's like, right, imagine it's two dimensions, like two sides of a coin. We're all on Earth. On this side of the coin, we evolve from an object in a unknown field of activity until we come to realize we are this space. So it's as if creaturehood evolves into conscious spacehood. Okay, now when we become space, the space becomes timelessly accessible everywhere. So it's another way of saying right now you are living in your memory, what beyond this realm. It's as if memories live in you. So it's as if what is empty space is like the life in it somewhere else, life in another dimension. It's like alive, technically. That means right now where I'm speaking, it's not like there's just like a, this fictitious view of the soul being inside my body, like an ethereal version of me in my body. No. The space is alive before personality extracts itself out of what it has access to. In other words, I want the species to wonder about a simple strategy to life in bringing forth advanced civilization, and the most, as far as the mind can perceive, complex strategy in bringing forth an advanced civilization. Right? We have experienced dishonesty, and what does dishonesty give it to species? It literally traps it in simulations. That means it's like the more dishonesty there is, it's as if it's not that the children of the world are becoming more shy in the future generations. It's that when the world becomes more and more of a dishonest place, people stop caring to naturally to be their own inner realms and the outer realms. Right? It's as if when you're in a place you can't trust, you're not yourself technically. Right? If we consider power, let's say we have a person who attains the ultimate power, the most powerful being in the world, okay? The most powerful, let's say, person in the world. The most powerful person in the world has no reason to show its power because it already knows it's the most powerful person in the world, okay? So similarly, the most advanced human beings are so advanced that they don't need dishonest means. That means dishonesty is unnecessary if the intelligence is advanced enough to just do simpler levels of reality projected by them. Because in any moment we can look at life and be like, yo, this is all simply being here, or we can think that it's like there's a complex purpose of initiative to it. For billions of years, it's just been simply being, It's like the person sat down to meditate and realized they're being as they've always been. Like, there isn't much to it. It's as if dishonesty could be how the person never got a chance to see who they are. That could be a source of dishonesty. We can say dishonesty to self is when the person is afraid of being. Now, if there was dishonesty in the species, that means there's a fear of being a member of the species now. Right? This is the biggest source of dishonesty because there's no grand honor system. What honor is like in a world of simulation, you start creating a sphere of truth. It's as if honor is a sort of micro-truth dosing. But what it is in various moments realizing, the start of the journey. Right? Honor is like those people who have good memory, like they probably have honor. I'm pretty much approaching it this way. What would the most advanced being be like? The most advanced being would be so advanced that it doesn't need to do any extra effort to act. So the honesty is easy. It's just how the state is being, right? You can say before a person has preference on anything, they're honest, right? Let's say a person is waiting in a line, you know, to I don't know, buy a shawarma, right? It's as if you're just honestly being there. Nobody stands in a line dishonestly, you know what I mean? It's because in some sense, honesty is how you can be what you are, you know, where you are, right? But if you don't trust where you are, then it's like what you truly are cannot be there, right? I think everybody knows this to some degree. My attitude has been that there's a feeling in anything I do. Like, sure, there's a view of, like, you know, the physical dimension, what are the variables, the both known and unknown, and then when it comes to my mind, what are the variables, both known and unknown. Okay guys, my notepad is tripping. Alright guys, the notepad isn't working. So while I restarted, I guess what I wanted to say is that when I look at the dimension, when I look at what life is, it is a moment that is simply being. And this moment can have dimensions to it, and the dimensions are based on the effort of the win, right? That means it's as if deep down people are not personalities, they're how much effort they have in actually being something in reality. You know, if a person considers the world as unreal, you would disengage it, you would throw it away, and your whole life you will feel as if you have missed a great event. Okay, there we go. It's back. The notepad's back. Pretty much I see the human being. And I see a dimension of the body, I see a dimension of the mind, I see a dimension of the soul. This is the poetry of my own. When I say soul, I have a view on it that I feel everybody's view on what the soul actually is it's like what belongs to the eyes behind our eyes, you know, or what belongs to the world behind our eyes. It's only we will know. Like the beautiful thing about this life is that it's like one side of it is incredibly public and you're a physical entity in a physical world. The other side of it is that you are, in some sense, the unknown viewer of your imagination when your eyes are closed. And the content of the imagination is what I call the inner realms, but really what is looking out through your eyes. If the species wants to be truly honest, it has to come to the conclusion that the unknown is unknown. It's like the species really tried. It tried looking for truth, but when it discovered the unknown, when it discovered life is more like a changing film rather than a snapshot photo to frame on the wall of history. Like reality is how efficiently it goes forth, right? An advanced civilization, or let's say a dishonest civilization's advancement is not advanced at all. That means it is impossible for the dishonest to advance. That means if somebody imagine if in global culture we made laws, there was a law of decency, there was a law of honesty. Imagine, like sometimes people think a surveillance state is a bad thing, but in my view, and of course this is, I'm writing about this in my science fiction novel, and how I can't explain all of it here, but pretty much I have fathomed that if the species could trust itself, a surveillance state would just be an honorable level of intelligence advancement. So what I mean is that because we can't trust the human being, right, we can't trust ourselves to advance, to build something advanced for all of us, right? But unless somehow, that means if the future generations, they should be cautious, they should be street smart, but they should also realize that it's like the true value of nature is that you are on this journey of a lifetime once, every day happens once. The type of energy you are present as and manifest as is important pretty much every day, right? And this is based on the dimensions you see. For example, for me, I see the body, there's known variables and there's unknown variables, and the same thing for the others. When the inner realms stop desiring the outer realms, and when the outer realms stop desiring the inner realms, that neutrality is called honesty. Alright guys, let me read what I wrote here completely. So I've written, when the inner realms stop desiring the outer realms, and when the outer realms stop desiring the inner realms, that neutrality is called honesty. From the neutrality of the simultaneous awareness of body's world and mind's world, the freedom of infinity to advance is accessible. Instant. It's like I'm looking at it this way, where I'm saying, what would the most advanced civilization look like? And then I'm asking, okay, what would the most advanced members of a civilization look like? And then I ask myself, what is the most advanced state of mind of the members of an advanced civilization look like? And what I have come to realize is that it's like being advanced in all dimensions means being capable of looking at all the dimensions, you know? You see, the ability of the human being, if you look at lesser animals in nature, they're just reactions based on their instincts. They're instinctual, unconscious, reactive entities. When you look at the human being has an ability to freak out, you know, the whole fight or flight thing, you know, or it has an ability, you know, to, in some sense, look at the information, and rather than reacting to it as an unconscious entity, responding to it as a conscious, let's say, information processor of some sort, right? Like the ability of our minds is to look around, look at what is there, and based on the variables present, you know, some sort of modality of analysis comes forth. You know? So any human being that notices in any system of, let's say, sector of culture, in any cultural sector anywhere on the planet where human beings are moving, if any human being sees somebody being honest, in some sense, not only I think the karma of the moment just moves that way, but it's that what people interpret as luck, being lucky and unlucky, is a matter of being simple or being complex. It's like the intent. Every person's karma is, believe it or not, how they're holding a type of energy before they animate, before they do anything, right? It's a feeling. It's as if a communication, it doesn't just start from language. It's like there's an emotional space, and then from that emotional space there's a momentum for the language to move. To be honest is, in some sense, the species being like, okay, we don't know what we are. Every person has, in some sense, a task, you know, to truly wonder about what is going on in the human experience. And if we're smart enough, we'll learn from the bees and the ants, you know. And so in some sense, an advanced civilization is like, is you can say, you know, the greatest palace for the human species, right? When I say a palace, that means it's like we revert to this idea of, it's like the archaic revival of the idea of the kingdom of humanity. But this kingdom of humanity, its king is the future generations. That means imagine a king where imagine a kingdom, a monarchy, where the king is the future. The king is like, you know, the crown is like on, in some sense, on the head of the future. What that means is every person in the kingdom is serving the future, right? And when I say serving the future, this is not ignorance of the past or ignorance of the present. It's just realizing that when a creature notices the past is past and the present is here now, it's as if, why do we have a present? To consciously walk into their future. That's the point of the mind, to acknowledge, the unknown life of the world that's changing our eyes. I'm going to go into a quote tunnel of the term honesty. And a quote tunnel is pretty much me reading, sharing how people looked at themes, back in the day. So guys, I am honestly looking for, honesty quotes online right now. I should have said to be honest first. It's like, to be honest, honestly, I'm trying to be honest. Language is, what is language? It is a world inside a world that could make us forget where we were, Zig Ziglar, the foundation stones for a balanced success are honesty, character, integrity, faith, love, and loyalty. I'm gonna play my favorite song ever. One of my favorite songs ever. Okay. Groucho Marx says the secret of life is honesty and fair dealing. If you can fake that, you've got it made. Oh my god, this is genius. Guys, comedy has a power to evoke dimensions one never thought were possible into the human body. Comedians nowadays, they are all selling themselves short. They're talking about the suffering and misery of mankind. It's like if the future doesn't have a sense of humor, technically the species went extinct, Thomas Jefferson says honesty is the first chapter in the book of wisdom. Dennis Prager, goodness is about character, integrity, honesty, kindness, generosity, moral courage, and the like. More than anything else, it's about how we treat other people. You know why, guys? Because really how we treat other people is how we are actually, it's like how we see them from our world. We don't see others from their own world. It's the cool thing about life, Our eyes have access to worlds that only, the self can see. Right now, as I'm speaking, I'm just sharing my inner realms. Everybody, if 8 billion human beings, all of them began talking, we will uncover so many hidden treasures, right, in the inner realms of mankind. It's as if, where do inventions come from? Where do the greatest works of art come from? Where does the true inspiration of the muse or the logos come from? It all comes from the ability of a creature to notice that awareness is seeing beyond itself. Do you see it? Awareness by being beyond itself. The moment it accepts, the moment it is seeing beyond itself. Lao Tzu says, treat those who are good with goodness, and also treat those who are not good with goodness. Thus goodness is attained. Be honest to those who are honest, and be also honest to those who are not honest. Thus honesty is attained. Yeah, the Buddha is saying, like, if you want to truly be a liberated being, you have to be fearless in the presence of your original nature. That's really what honesty is. Honesty is pretty much, how the world was still a decent place. The outer realms can give us endless reasons to hate the world, but it can also give us endless challenges to overcome, to in some sense realize what would a species loving itself. It's like we don't need, self-love. We need the species to love itself now, and the species has denied this. Why? Because it's as if, what it is so hilarious. It's like a bunch of creatures appeared on a rock in the middle of nowhere. They freaked out. They started in some sense, wearing their own jerseys, and in some sense we are like, we are one species on Earth acting like we all are from different parts of the planet, but it's one planet, right? It's like if an extraterrestrial in the future was like, yo, where are you from? Imagine an extraterrestrial visits a space station of humanity in the future, and the extraterrestrial says where are from, and we say we're from Earth, right? It's as if there is no I'm from, this part of Earth. It's like, no, the Earth was never in parts, it's one humanity. And as soon as we can build sky cities as I've envisioned in Civilization 2.0, the species will realize excuse me, the Earth can be used as an endless resource, or it can be what I call turned into Earth heaven. This is phase 2 of Civilization 2.0, which I'm writing a book on. Those who care for this voice, you will see Civilization 2.0 is my magnus opus. Technically, I'm treating it that way, and hopefully I pronounced that right. Yeah. Oh, excuse me, magnum opus. There we go. I had a feeling something was off. Gotta brush up on my Latin, by starting to learn Latin. Oh man, guys, this world is fascinating. It's like whatever we do at the end, we're still staring at the unknown. Who knows how far humanity will go. All I know is that if we build an honest civilization, we will have access to so much more incredible technologies that this honesty doesn't allow us to even get to the designer's table to even create. It's like a world, victory for the human species is a world that can trust, right? We stepped out. It's as if like we had this effort to step out of, the jungle to the concrete jungle, right? It's like all those people acting like tough guys. It's like go in front of a bear and a lion and act tough. Like, it's like... It's like there is a savageness to being a human being. But as the ancient Greeks say, to tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of this world. Now we have to complete it. That's the advanced civilization. A species so capable that there is no longer war. Why? Because we could see other options. We could see other ways of the world happening, right? It's as if instead of two world leaders, somebody go tell this to the United Nations, instead of world leaders, fighting over, in some sense, nations, like human beings going to war, right? The person's like, man, I was, cutting hair back home. Now I'm holding a gun. Like, what the fuck? Instead of having wars happen, in some sense, we have the world leaders play like video games where the video game company just simulates their militaries, right? They just simulate the countries, and it's like it's like something that starts from the inner realms. A conflict that starts from the inner realms can be resolved in the inner realms. War is a conflict in the inner realms that doesn't get resolved, and it has massive consequence. you know. Isaac Asimov, this next level science fiction writer, he says, violence is the last refuge of the incompetent. Dishonesty leads to violence, so it's incompetence, you know. That means it's as if all those people being evil and dishonest, that's incompetence. Like, it's much harder to try to see what would the decency of mankind look like, and if the world could be trusted, what kind of genius ideas would emerge, right? It's as if humanity noticed extinction, and before extinction, it in some sense raised from the earth, you know, the greatest force. It's as if we are unleashing the greatest powers in the world before the world, in some sense, before the curtains are pulled, right? That's the sense of an advanced civilization. It doesn't mean chaos. It means incredible sensitivity to how the most rare and alien-like thing happening on this planet is how we are being civilized human beings. How there is a sort of order in this endless chaos. An order has appeared. Right, it's like, you know, when your teenagers want to break laws, right? But when you realize far ahead, you see it was an evolutionary leap that we could subjectively tame the savageness of a species to then push it slowly to a position where it has the role of a communicator rather than the role of a fighter. Right, and what it means is that the rarest thing on this planet is life, and the rarest thing is the activation of the ability of that life. That means there are some teachers who are like, okay, let me just, you know, give this student a letter so, you know, the student stops talking. You know? It's just to see how far humanity can advance before we can no longer see how it advances. That's it. I have found no greater outer realm purpose than to build an advanced civilization. It is the idea of ideas. It is, I would say, the greatest idea on earth. I feel every person, when it comes to what is the purpose of our outer realms and us being physical entities, stranded on a rock in the middle of this cosmic sea. You know, I would say the concept, the word advance was like I feel that's like a guardian spirit behind these talks, you know. If somebody was like Mr.Within, you know, what would you name, let's say, the logos, the movement of the logos behind these episodes, and how they synchronize in, let's say, the karmic fields of others. I would say in some sense it's as if, imagine a person just, you know, having no preference for anything, and suddenly, as if a command was shouted in the void, advance, right? It was as if there was something that in some sense, like, I could say a push from the gods. It's like an inner voice that in some sense reveals the future. It's in reach, you know. I shouldn't say a voice, a whisper of the gods, you know. And when I say gods, it's the might and majesty of the living universe. That is the true kingdom of humanity. This is why those Bhakti yogis are way ahead of Raja and Karma yogis. Raja and Karma yogis, they are like, the Raja yogi is using knowledge to attain moksha, nirvana, right? The Karma yogi is not looking for knowledge, is trying to do the right action to get to heaven. In some sense, that's the Karma yogi, you know, using work as a way to get to heaven. Some people are trying to know truth to get to heaven. Some people are, you know, working for truth to get into heaven. And then you can say the Bhakti yogi loved truth. And it's this strange situation that when it's like Studio Ghibli, oh my god, this Japanese animation company, the genius behind that, created this archetype in this show called Spirited Away, where it was the power of simplicity and honesty. You know, beside, beyond what culture commands, the original presence of every human being stands. That's the beautiful thing about spirituality, right? First you want outer clarification or verification for it. Then you realize it's an inner nature of mind. It's as if the mind has access to another dimension of sight. After you have observed and expressed in that dimension of sight, you notice that the trust of phenomena is in the space that it happens in, right? It's as if, behind every great act, there is a great space for where that act could happen. I'll continue with the quote tunnel. Plato says, honesty is for the most part less profitable than dishonesty. Not for somebody who is if you have an emperor's ego, honesty is like a given. An honest emperor, 100% in history there had to be, right? Like there's been crazy emperors and there's been chill emperors, there's been weak emperors, strong emperors, so there had to be honest emperors and dishonest emperors, right? Good and evil emperors, right? And so the good emperor realized that the value of what is here deserves to be preserved. The evil didn't believe the value of what is here deserves to be preserved. That means if I was destroy civilization 1.0 and build civilization 2.0, that would be the most evilest shit, right? And also the stupidest thing, right? Why? Because in some sense, it's like I'm treating reality, instead of putting good and evil on it, I'm like, okay, anything that we have so far as a species, this current civilization 1.0, it is a prototype. It's as if a designer doesn't have good and evil, really. So it's very easy to be honest as a designer, I think that's also one thing about true art, that novelty is actually, the revelation of honesty, right? Salvador Dali says, drawing is the honesty of art. There's no possibility of cheating. It is either good or bad. Benjamin Franklin says, honesty is the best policy. Let's make that a universal policy. Everybody is listening. James E. Foss says, honesty is more than not lying. It is truth-telling, truth-speaking, truth-living, and truth-loving. Yeah, it's as if the person's talking about a truth when they're like, do you love it? And the person's like, no. It's like the person's talking about a truth they don't love, And honesty, it's just the simplicity of the presence of nature before man's mind turns it into a value system-oriented game. Guys, my laptop has, less than 10% battery. It has 10% battery exactly, so I'm gonna end this off quickly. Scotch Borchetta, relationships feed on credibility, honesty, and consistency. Meredith Monk, that inner voice is both gentleness and clarity, so to get to authenticity, you really keep going down to the bone, to the honesty and inevitability of something. Richard Bach, your conscience is the measure of the honesty of your selfishness. Listen to it carefully. A.R. Rahman, when you do something with a lot of honesty, appetite, and commitment, the input reflects in the output. Johnny Depp says, for a long time I tried to manage an honesty and openness about my personal life because I'm human and I'm normal, well, semi-normal. You see, guys, I think there's nothing, because, here's the idea. If the world is an artificial place, to be honest in an artificial place is another way of saying not doing anything artificial in an artificial world. So it is a very Taoistic approach. The Taoistic approach is like action through inaction. It's literally like through stillness and silence, one can realize their potential, or through their efforts. Bertrand Russell says, I believe in using words, not fists. I believe in my outrage knowing people are living in boxes on the street. I believe in honesty. I believe in a good time. I believe in good food. I believe in sex. Okay. Alright. Bertrand Russell's pretty much shouting out everything he believes in. But there's truth to it, guys, that we have the honesty to acknowledge all the dimensions of our life. Kate Hudson says, honesty will never break you. Raja Krishnamurthy says, when the norm is decency, other virtues can thrive: integrity, honesty, compassion, kindness, and trust. John Quincy Adams says, all men profess honesty as long as they can. To believe all men honest would be folly. To believe none so is something worse. Exactly, right? That means it's like, even if there's people, let's say you're trying to build an efficient system, an efficient civilization, and let's say there's inefficiency in the civilization, all that the advanced memes can do is not care. Not care, when I say as in not let the inefficiency affect them, but care for restructuring the inefficiency in the outer realms. The idea, they say, is that how do you get rid of what's another way of saying it? How do you get rid of an enemy to become friends with the enemy? Right? It's like you get rid of an enemy by making a friend out of an enemy. Right? Now it's another way of saying, instead of enemy and friend, we see obstacles. Right? Do you see? It's as if you, in some sense, befriend the obstacle, meaning the person who's trying to solve a problem actually allows their mind to reach a sort of neutral state where they go into the universe and try to fathom a first-person perspective of how an idea is happening. Right? Like our inner realms are very advanced, and every person should buy a notebook, and anytime they have a very profound something that here's my, Mr. Within's guide to writing. Write only when something is so important that you don't want to forget it the next day. Lemuel K. Washburn says, honesty is never seen sitting astride the fence. Franklin D. Roosevelt. Confidence thrives on honesty, on honor, on the sacredness of obligations, on faithful protection, and on unselfish performance. Without them, it cannot live. And so, dear listeners, if you want to be an advanced being, I guess the best thing to do is to see how advanced your original state is. So, guys, I'm noticing there's stuff in the chat section. There's literally laptop is at 7%. I'll give it maybe 5 minutes before the laptop dies out. And I'm at the end of the episode, so let me see what I can finish it off as. Okay, the honest among you are the most advanced. Pretty much I'm saying those people who are truly capable and able, and through a view of skill, have ability. They don't fear being that ability anywhere they are. Right? So it's as if a freedom to, in some sense, allow the ability of a species to arise. The honest are the guardians of the realm, because the honesty preserves the decency in the human psychology. Now, in the subtitle, I say protecting the future generations from dehumanization. So somebody in the chat section says, Mr. Within, I made a comment at the start concerning the agenda of humanists who are rampant right now. However, I further observe that your advanced civilization is right here, right now in the dumps. Okay. So in the chat section, guys, I see this comment. I'm not sure actually what the comment is pointing to. But I'll say this, don't fear dehumanization. Realize that underneath all human behavior, everybody has an inner child, and their inner child is the memories of how they were as a child, pretty much. Right? So it's as if, let's say, two people are angry and one side wants to destroy the other. It's as if before you destroy the other, you just realize, man, this person I'm fighting used to be a kid. You know, it's like we all used to be kids, you know? So in some sense, the simplicity of how honest the world could be back then is as if something to remember, to consciously incorporate into modern civilization, right? It's as if the world needs to prioritize, you know. Here's the thing, it's like my vision of civilization 2.0 is I have noticed that there are dehumanized dangers in the future, but I feel that in my, at least, strategy of civilization 2.0, the vision I have for it, I don't know how to tell you, but it's like we are so much more able, and in the future generations there are going to be incredible children born that all the things that are bothering us now, they will be way ahead of thinking about them. You know, it's like the future generations, it's like people don't realize how many geniuses are going to arrive, how many pilots are going to arrive in this plane of existence. It's literally the symphony of, you know, it's literally we're reaching a point where this whole species needs to behave differently, so it's like the collective feeling is going to bring forth advanced beings. And we should consider that it's multidimensional, right? The moment we think the truth has to be a singular dimension, it's so easy to say somebody is wrong and they deserve to be destroyed. Like that shit is, like the dictator mindset was a singular worldview of truth, but in reality, we have to acknowledge we're multidimensional beings. And now the most fascinating thing is, how do multidimensional beings build a multidimensional system when they have been living in a system that has been just painted by dualism this whole time, right? It's as if to truly wonder about the advancement of humanity, we have to wonder about if it's in reach, and it is. That's the most incredible thing about an advanced civilization, right? Where internally, in our inner realms, a person can see the most advanced civilization, but in front of their eyes, right? It's as if civilization 1.0 is this giant chunk of clay where all the human beings alive are slowly sculpting it, right? And so the vision of the future commands advanced activity. That means it's like it's like an advanced humanity is another way of saying a species that has started to behave in an advanced way, right? Every moment is, in some senses, opened up. If something had to only mean something, you know, if one thing had to only mean one, like a certain thing, right? Like it's as if I'll give you an example. Right now I'm looking at this cup in front of me. It's as if I look at this object and think it's a cup, it's like when you realize the multidimensional nature of perception, you realize, oh my God, I could have called this cup anything. We could have all called this cup anything. So the story of mankind, the ethos that is moving us, it is going to emerge out of those who are, in some sense, through an inner realm honesty, advancing the outer realms. Because what else can you do? We're in this world once to, it's as if every person's here to meet their most advanced state of being, their most advanced self, you know. and that person, or if someone from the New Age community asked me if I believe in guardian angels, I'd be like, I believe all my guardian angels are my future selves. God is the future self of everybody. Even religious books say, everything started from God and everything returns to God. What is that? It's another way of saying from the inconceivable, the conceivable arose. It acknowledged the inconceivable, and then it became the inconceivable. You see, it's another way of saying the honor of humanization is the decency of allowing the natural human being to be naturally alive, right? Inner extinction, like if in the future we all become robots, that's dehumanized. That's dehumanized danger, right? If in that's technically inner extinction. In the outer realms, we're like, human personalities, robotic bodies, immortal till the end of time, or as much as the material lasts, right? But it's as if it's an inner extinction of the naturalness of the human body. So it's as if I was to say what are the most important technologies, one would be the health sector, right? In some sense, we have to find a way to create one efficient abode. Right, it's what it is. What I'm trying to do is say that in order to advance civilization, we can't just start by advancing the whole thing because everybody's in their own world moving. So we have to start building sectors of advanced behavior. Right, it's as if it's like the species civilization 1.0 is actually realizing that its potential is of the nature of civilization 2.0. Right, an advanced civilization is a civilization where when you wake up, it's as if you're like, why am I here? And then this feeling comes that every living being on this planet is moving towards something that is beyond every single one of them. What is true advancement? It's the true activation of the potential of a species in the world. Anyways, guys, before the laptop ends the stream, I'm gonna end it. Thank you for listening. Much blessings and namaste. And let us realize that the most advanced humanity starts with the most advanced state of mind, the most advanced mindset. There is a huge chance that the world is advanced even if we believe we are not. There's an advanced movement of intelligence going on in the cosmos. Anyways, thanks for listening. Much blessings and awesome.